Part 13. Tomb Raider, Marry Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 121. Just when the boat came to a corner, it suddenly saw a figure in white standing there. Ah! Ah! Damn it, what is this? Ghost. Chen Wenjin was so frightened that he screamed. Fatty Wang was so frightened that he stumbled and almost fell into the boat. Pan Zi was so frightened that his face changed. Even Wu Sanzhong was so frightened by this sudden scene that his eyes widened. The big pupils shrank. Just around the corner in front of them, they saw a long-haired female ghost in a white robe standing on her back. She lowered her head slightly, and her knee-length hair was hanging down, covering almost all of her face. Covered up and went in. Not only that. After everyone was frightened, they also discovered that not far behind the female ghost, there was actually a female ghost standing behind her, the same shape, the same posture, motionless and silent, stand there blankly. These must be the things that escaped from the crystal coffin just now. Chen Wenjin said firmly, completely forgetting that she had calmly comforted everyone before. There was nothing in those crystal coffins. Shit, there's another one. When Fatty Wang saw the two female ghosts, he couldn't help but murmured and cursed. He felt like he was trembling slightly when he spoke. Sumu was the only one who calmly looked at the white figure standing there. It seemed that he had already had an expectation. Come on, come on, come on, take out the black donkey's hooves and use them to deal with the female ghost. Pan Zi said in panic as he began to rummage for the black donkey hooves prepared in his backpack. Those were originally intended to be used to deal with the rice dumplings in the tomb, but I didn't expect that they would be used now. Chen Wenjin also hurriedly searched for the black donkey's hooves in his backpack. However, before the two of them opened their backpacks, Sumu stopped them and said, "It's useless. The black donkey's hooves can be used to deal with Zongzi, but it's useless against these female ghosts." Ah! Now what? If you don't use black donkey hooves, what else can you use? I originally hoped for black donkey hooves, but now I'm told that even the most scientific things that can deal with female ghosts are useless. It's like all the things they use to save their lives are ineffective. Even Wu Sanzhong also started to panic. Sumu smiled and reassured, "Don't worry, I've already prepared it, Fatty." Sumu called out, and the fat man looked at Sumu for a moment as if he had suddenly realized something, and exclaimed, Oh, I remember. It's not his fault that he was a little slow in reacting. It was just that he was frightened by the sudden appearance of some female ghosts, and his thinking became slower. That's why he didn't react. The first thing he remembered was what he had been asked to prepare earlier. At this moment, the fat man like Sumu immediately reacted and took out the things from his backpack that Sumu had asked him to prepare in advance before setting off. It was a stack of yellow talisman paper, a talisman. There were also complicated runes drawn with cinnabar on the paper, and then the fat man took out a copper coin sword. However, the copper coin sword, which was half the length of an arm, was all connected in series with 5 emperor's coins. There was also a large number of lightning strikes. Nails and wooden swords made of peach wood are all magical tools for dealing with female ghosts. Why are you carrying these things? Wu Sanzhong looked at the talismans in Fatty Wang's hands in surprise, with unbearable surprise in his eyes. Fatty, you are really great, so foresighted. Fatty Wang patted his head silently in embarrassment, gestured to Sumu, and said, How could I have imagined this? Brother Su asked me to prepare these before he left. I was still wondering why I needed to prepare these things. It would be better to prepare a few more black donkey hooves to be safe. I didn't expect that these things would actually come in handy. This is not only useful, it is a life-saving tool at critical moments. Wu Sanzhong couldn't hide the excitement in his heart and said happily. Everyone looked at Sumu in surprise, once again impressed by Sumu's clever calculation. Now, Wu Sanzhong and Chen Wenjin were not sure whether Sumu could figure it out. They were even more convinced. Now that they could deal with ghosts in their hands, everyone seemed to be confused. When they looked at the two female ghosts again, they were not as panicked as before. They had their own hands. After holding enough magic weapons, they all stared closely at the female ghost who seemed to be motionless. However, Wu Sanzhong, who was keen, noticed that the female ghost seemed to have moved just now. What should we do now? Fat Wang also stared at the female ghost closely, fearing that if he didn't pay attention, the female ghost would disappear, and then suddenly appear again, maybe in front of or behind him. Just imagine the terrifying scene. Fatty Wang was so big the man couldn't help but tremble. Sumu looked at the two female ghosts, slightly curled up the corner of his mouth with unknown meaning, and said in a deep voice, "They are in front of us, so if I want to continue walking inside, I must get rid of them first. So what are we waiting for? Just do it and it's done." Panzi now had something to deal with the female ghost, as if he had the confidence. His whole body became fierce, he held a peachwood sword tightly in his hand, and stood in front of everyone first. Standing with his sword horizontally, he looked like a patron saint. Fatty Wang and Sumu followed closely behind. Although Fatty Wang was a little stronger, his movements were relatively flexible. He jumped to the bow of the ship in 2 strides and took out something from his bag. He held a copper coin sword in his hand. He stared at the two female ghosts like a wolf, as if this could directly frighten the female ghosts. Chen Wenjin was blocked behind by several people, holding a paddle in his hand. Although her heart was already so frightened by the two female ghosts that suddenly appeared, her hands and feet were a little cold. But she still tried to calm down her breathing that was a little disordered due to nervousness. All 4 of them had tools specifically designed to deal with ghosts in their hands. Their hearts were filled with confidence. Therefore, when waiting for the two female ghosts who suddenly jumped towards them, no one had any hesitation in their hearts, and there was even some faint excitement. After all, 4 against 2, it was hard to take it easy. However, just when they thought the female ghost would suddenly attack, something happened that surprised them. Ah! The two female ghosts suddenly raised their heads toward them, revealing a pair of eyes with no whites and a pale face. They opened their mouths and let out a weird, scalp-numbing scream, and then in full view of everyone, 2 more white figures appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. Looking at the 2 summoned by the scream of the female ghost, and the 2 almost identical white figures, everyone who had originally had a surge of confidence seemed to have been poured a basin of cold water on them at this moment. But for a moment, it was like a cold air rushed from the soles of the feet directly to the top of the head. 2 more of these actually came out. It was originally a 4-on-2 situation, but now it has become 1-on-1 in the blink of an eye. How can we do this? Wu Sanzhong couldn't help but feel a little heavy. I'm afraid the current situation is not optimistic. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 122. Ah! Another scream came, recalling Wu Sanzhen's somewhat divergent thoughts. When he looked back, his expression changed greatly. I saw the 4 female ghosts rising directly into the air, their hands turned into claws and their expressions ferocious as they rushed toward the crowd. In an instant, everyone felt a sudden chilling wind blowing around them. Accompanied by the shrill screams of the 4 female ghosts in white, one can't help but tremble in the heart. Get out of the way! Wu Sanzhong shouted sharply, grabbed the talisman in his hand and swatted it towards an oncoming female ghost in white. The talisman was what Sumu asked Fatty Wang to prepare. Although Wu Sanzhong didn't know if it was really useful, but I couldn't think too much about it at this moment, so I just used the stack of talisman papers. He was very fast, but the female ghost was about to be hit by the talisman paper in Wu Sanzhen's hand. Suddenly he disappeared right in front of Wu Sanzhen's eyes. Missing. Wu Sanzhen's heart suddenly felt like a very bad premonition. His nerves were tense to the extreme, and he used all his senses to be alert to possible dangers around him. Then in the next second, he suddenly felt something behind him. There was a sudden change. Wu Sanzheng didn't have time to think about it. He turned around and reached out to send the talisman in his hand. He just had time to see a white shadow flash in front of him, and the talisman in his hand was already attached to the palm of the female ghost in white. A very strange burning sound came, and at the same time, in the palm of the white-clothed female ghost's hand, a stream of white smoke rose up. Ah! The female ghost in white suddenly became extremely ferocious, opened her mouth and let out a scream that almost pierced her eardrums. Immediately, Wu Sanzheng saw that the wrist of the female ghost in white had become more unreal than before. Haha, it works! Wu Sanzheng shouted in surprise, and without any hesitation he directly attacked the female ghost in white. At the same time, Fatty Wang and Pan Zi were also attacked by two female ghosts in white at the same time. However, their reactions were faster than Wu's. Sanzheng was slightly inferior. He could not escape the attack of the female ghost in white immediately. Instead, his clothes and arms were scratched by the female ghost in white. Sumu did not panic when dealing with the female ghost like Fatty Wang and others. Feed. On the contrary, he was still the calmest one. Although the sudden appearance of two more female ghosts caught Sumu off guard, who originally thought he had a chance to win. But he did not feel that they were invincible now. Be careful, their hands, the things in the hand were enough to deal with them. The female ghost was injured by Wu Sanzhen's move and disappeared instantly. However, just when Wu Sanzheng thought that the female ghost was afraid of the things in his hand, the female ghost once again came out from behind. This time Wu Sanzheng didn't have time to resist the female ghost's attack with the props in his hand, and directly let the female ghost grab a large piece of fabric from his shoulders. Fortunately, Wu Sanzhen's clothes were quite strong. The female ghost's sharp nails did not hurt his flesh. The female ghost immediately disappeared as soon as the attack was successful. They seemed to know that several people had weapons that could deal with them, and they became very fearful and cautious. Also because Wu Sanzheng had hurt his hand just now, the female ghost had more evil thoughts towards them than before. The air around them seemed to be colder than before. In this empty cave, there were waves of female ghosts screaming. The sound of crying and howling echoed vaguely, which was very strange. The four female ghosts kept disappearing and emerging from unexpected places, and the way they came out became more strange and unexpected each time. It made the people who were fully prepared began to find it difficult to deal with it. Soon, except for Sumu, the clothes on the other people were more or less scratched by the four female ghosts. This can't go on like this. Pan Zi blocked the female ghost's attack with the peachwood sword in his hand, while distractedly talking to Sumu and the others. While he was talking, a female ghost appeared from Pan Zi's side again, which was enough. Half-finger-long nails clawed at Pan Zi's throat. Pan Zi was suddenly startled, his pupils tightened suddenly, and in desperation, he leaned back and fell to the side. Next to him was Wang. The fat man saw that the place where Pan Zi fell was the edge of the boat, so he quickly stretched out his hand to catch him. However, in such a gap, a female ghost directly rose into the air, with her hands forming claws and heading towards him at a very ferocious speed. The two of them rushed over. As soon as Fatty Wang helped Pan Zi steady, he turned around and saw this extremely dangerous scene. He felt that his heart seemed to be suffocated for a moment. However, that feeling only appeared for a second, and then what came was a rush of hot blood rushing directly from the soles of the feet to the top of the head. "I will fight with you." Fat Wang's eyes showed a fierce cold light, and he bit his back teeth hard. Then his whole body seemed to explode, and he walked towards the female ghost with a strong step. Pan Zi did not expect that Fatty Wang was so talented, and also as if they had been given blood, they rushed forward with the peachwood sword in their hands. The two of them cooperated to attack the female ghost. However, what they faced was not a creature that existed in the ordinary sense at all. Even if the two of them tried their best to fight, the confrontation was still embarrassing under the siege of the female ghost. Wu San's Hung had also been scratched several times by the female ghost. Chen Wenjin was anxious but didn't know what to do. He almost lost the paddle in his hand. She fell into the water. However, even though she was worried about Wu San's Hung, she still endured her anxiety and followed Wu Sanzhen's instructions to paddle the boat towards the exit. As long as she left this corpse cave quickly, those female ghosts we can't hurt Wu San's Hung and the others, Chen Wenjin thought to himself. However, perhaps knowing that their ship was slowly moving away, the female ghosts' attacks became more and more fierce. Seeing that several people were more or less affected by there were some wounds, and even Sumu didn't look so relaxed. This can't go on like this. Sumu murmured in his heart, watching everyone being attacked calmly by the female ghosts. From the beginning, they were dragged down to the point where most of their physical strength was exhausted. They were about to be pressed down and beaten by the female ghosts. Sumu frowned. He quickly thought about how to solve the current predicament. His thoughts were running rapidly, and suddenly an idea came to Sumu's mind. The blood of the ancestral dragon in his body has a suppressive effect on these evil spirits. If the ancestral dragon can the blood be directed to deal with the four female ghosts? Thinking of this, Sumu's eyes flashed and he no longer hesitated, and directly began to try to mobilize the pressure of the ancestral dragon blood in his body. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 123. Sumu reached out and threw a yellow talisman towards the female ghost. After successfully blocking the female ghost's attack, he immediately closed his eyes and began to try to sense and mobilize the power of blood in his body. Sumu, what are you doing? Wu San's Hung on the side didn't know why Sumu suddenly closed his eyes. Looking at the vicious female ghost, he couldn't help but frown and shouted nervously. Fatty Wang and Pan Zi were already busy with themselves at this time. Seeing Sumu made this sudden move, even if he wanted to step forward to help protect him, it was a little powerless. The female ghost that Sumu had repelled before appeared in front of Sumu again at this moment. She stretched out her hands and touched the black nails directly. Then he pinched Sumu's neck. Brother Sumu, be careful. Sumu. Everyone only had time to watch the female ghost quickly approach Sumu, but they had no time to stop her. Sumu could naturally hear everyone's voices and everyone's anxious cries. But he didn't make any response. Because at this time, he was concentrating on sensing the ancestral dragon bloodline in his body, trying to control the pressure from the ancestral dragon bloodline. Seeing that the female ghost's nails were almost touching the skin of Sumu's neck. With his eyes closed, Sumu could already feel the cold air coming from the female ghost. At this critical moment, Sumu suddenly opened his eyes. Ah! An imperceptible golden light flashed in Sumu's eyes, and he raised his head and shouted loudly. At that moment, invisible to others, an invisible arc-shaped wave of air violently burst out from Sumu's body. The female ghost, who could have killed Sumu right away, had no time to dodge and was directly knocked away by the terrifying air wave. If you take a closer look, you will find that the female ghost's spirit body is even more illusory than before. Not only the female ghost who wanted to attack Sumu was knocked away. Even the female ghost who was attacking Fatty Wang and Pan Zi from Wusan province just now. Under the threat of that arc-shaped air wave, they all stopped their attacks and wanted to retreat to avoid this terrifying blow. However, just when the female ghosts were trying to leave invisibly, they heard Sumu's cold and emotionless voice saying, "Stop! It's just 2 words, but it seems to contain endless laws. Those female ghosts actually stopped their gradually disintegrating figures. Then, in the surprised eyes of others, they slowly emerged from the illusion. Became solidified. Kneel down. Another scolding sounded, and the female ghost in white who was so vicious before actually knelt down obediently without any sign of resistance. Damn it, so awesome. Fat Wang looked at the scene in front of him and couldn't help but cluck his tongue in shock. Not only him, but also Wu Sanzheng, Chen Wenjin, and Pan Ziyi were also surprised by the scene that happened in front of them. What's going on? Why did those female ghosts suddenly become so obedient? Although Wu Sanzheng and the others had many doubts in their hearts, when they saw Sumu with a calm face, they temporarily suppressed all their doubts. Now that's not the question for now. We have to wait until these 4 female ghosts are dealt with. The 4 female ghosts are kneeling on the shoal not far from the ship. Now all the attention falls on those 4. On the body of the female ghost. Just now, he successfully mobilized the coercive power in Zilong's bloodline and swept directly towards the 4 female ghosts. The female ghost who faced the front was almost knocked to pieces by the coercive force. The other female ghosts were also directly shocked by Sumu's control of the blood pressure, and they knelt down obediently. Sumu held the 5 Emperor's money dagger in his hand and stared at the 4 female ghosts with burning eyes. He walked to the boat, he kicked hard on the edge of the boat, and he jumped directly into the air and jumped onto the shoal. Wu Sanzheng, Wang Fati and the 4 of them just watched helplessly, and each of them was so nervous that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. I saw Sumu holding the sword in his hand and walking step by step in front of a female ghost in white. Then he raised the 5 Emperor's money sword in his hand high and slashed hard at the neck of the female ghost in white. Go down. The female ghost, who was frightened by the pressure of the ancestor dragon's bloodline, had no way to resist. After Sumu's magic sword slashed on her body, she could only make a piercing scream. Then her whole body was like boiling water. Like water vapor, it turned into a thick mist and dissipated in the air. After killing a female ghost in white, Sumu didn't stop at all and walked directly towards the second female ghost in white. The same like the first female ghost in white, there was no way to resist, and it turned into white mist unwillingly under Sumu's sword. The next 2 also failed to escape the fate of being killed by Sumu. But in just a moment, Sumu killed the 4 ferocious female ghosts in white with his sword so easily, causing them to lose their souls. Ding! It is detected that there is a dropped attribute nearby. Will the host pick it up automatically? In his mind, the sound of system machinery rang. Sumu looked towards the ground, and sure enough he saw several small white light groups, which fell quietly on the ground. Sumu looked through the few I found a light group with attributes, and found that it turned out to be about spiritual attributes, so I chose to pick it up automatically without hesitation. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the spiritual attribute of the female ghost in white. After confirming that his mental power had indeed been improved, Sumu once again jumped back to the boat. Fatty Pan Ziyi, the king of Wusan province, and Chen Wenjin looked at Sumu in amazement. His eyes are like looking at some alien. Why are you looking at me like that? As soon as Sumu returned to the boat, he accepted the attention of everyone. No matter how shameless and hardy he was, he couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. Awesome, brother Su. Fat Wang suddenly gave Sumu a thumbs up, and the admiration in his eyes almost overflowed. Wu Sanzheng also looked at Sumu in disbelief and said in confusion. Did you do something just now? Why do those female ghosts suddenly seem to be controlled? Let you kill. Not only Wu Sanzheng but also the other 3 looked at Sumu with curiosity. Sumu glanced at the 4 of them, smiled mysteriously, then put his index finger to his lips and said with a smile. Secret. Fat Wang suddenly said cut and gave Sumu a roll of his eyes. Wu Sanzheng and the others also knew that everyone has their own secrets. It is human nature not to want to tell them. Since Sumu didn't want to tell them, he wouldn't force himself to know. In short, Sumu also saved their lives, and he kept this feeling in his heart. After solving the female ghost in white, everyone was freed from danger. Panzi Fatty Wang and Wang took the oar from Chen Wenjin's hand and started rowing slowly. They didn't encounter any other dangers in the next section of the road, and they got out of the dark corpse cave safely. When we arrived at the blue sky and white clouds outside, everyone breathed a complete sigh of relief when they saw the bright light outside, and their high-hanging hearts fell back into their stomachs. Rowing along the river bank, everyone found the ferry stopped, and then took the luggage ashore again. This time there was no guide to lead the way, but fortunately, we followed the road and reached a small village along the way. Everyone took the luggage and found a small guest house to stay. Although the condition of this kind of guest house is not very good, it is relatively clean and safe. Everyone simply ordered something to fill their stomachs in the guest house. Just as they were about to go back to discuss the next action, Wu Sanzheng saw it with sharp eyes. A man that made him a little concerned. The man was wearing a black shorts with a big hood. The white hood hid the man's entire face, and people could only vaguely see a slight peak. Chin. However, the whole face of the person is not clear. There is a unique belt tied around his waist, and a long thing wrapped carefully with a piece of cloth is slung on his shoulder. Wu Sanzhen's eyes are slightly squinting. I secretly felt that the cloth wrapped inside must be a weapon. Third brother, what are you looking at? Chen. Wenjin looked at Wu Sanzheng curiously and asked. After Wu Sanzheng saw the man going upstairs, he turned back and said to everyone. That person just now should also be here to rob the tomb. Fatty Wang said in surprise, how do you know, Wu? Sanzheng glanced upstairs, thought for a while and said. That man has a tomb aura that doesn't exist in ordinary people. It's something that people who have been dealing with ancient tombs all year round will have, and if you look at the thing that man is carrying, it definitely looks like a sword. Weapons, a mysterious man with a sword and full of tomb aura appeared in this place. Who do you think he could be? Wu Sanzhen's analysis was very clear. When he said this, Fatty Wang and others felt that this was indeed the case. But Sumu had been meditating. He also saw the mysterious man just now, but what he saw was different than Wu Sanzheng saw more and looked more carefully. When Sumu saw the man's clothes, a figure suddenly appeared in his heart. Then he looked carefully at the man's fingers and found that the man's two fingers were strange. Incomparably taller, one name stood out in Sumu's heart. That person was Zhang Kailing. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 124. In the original work, Zhang Kailing looks so mysterious. He always used a big hood to hide his entire face outside. Although he has a handsome face, he seems to never want to be seen, and his unusual fingers are a highly recognizable symbol of Minayupin. The long object on his back must be his ancient black gold sword. It's just that he shouldn't have the black gold ancient sword at this time, right? And what are you doing here? Questions rang in Sumu's heart, and he carefully recalled the plot in the original work. However, the original work did not describe what Minayuping was doing during this period, and naturally it did not describe how Minayuping came back here. However, Sumu recalled that when Wu Tianzhen went to the tomb later in the original work, he found that the ghost seal in the Lu Palace was missing. Now that I think about it, Minayuping must have come here for Geixi. The more Sumu thought about it, the more likely he felt that this was very possible, but whether this was the reason or not still needs to be verified. Grave robber? That's our opponent. Panzi's heart was racing so fast that he turned around and went to the front desk to find the girl at the front desk. Then he used both soft and hard tactics to get the room number where the mysterious person lived. Panzi, what do you want to do? Fat Wang came up and asked in a mysterious voice, his eyes were filled with the excitement of watching the excitement and not taking it too seriously. Wu Sanzhong also saw Pan Zi's actions and guessed what Pan Zi wanted to do, but he didn't think about it. Stop him. He actually wanted to test that person's strength. Pan Zi was pretty good, so it would be good to go up and test him. Sumu didn't comment on this. He knew Min Yuping's strength, and Pan Zi would definitely not be able to hurt Men Yuping. And he also needed to find a reason to get to know Men Yuping. Everyone went upstairs with their own thoughts. Pan Zi walked towards the room where Men Yuping lived without saying anything. Bang bang bang. There was a knock on the door, and Pan Zi waited quietly outside the door. Soon he heard footsteps coming from the room, getting closer and closer. When the footsteps stopped at the door was opened from the inside the next second. What catches the eye is still the mysterious appearance, with no real face visible. Pan Zi didn't give the other party any chance to say anything. The moment the door was opened, the person inside kicked him out. If this kick was strong, the people in the room would definitely fall out with such force. However, the expected picture did not appear. When the mysterious man kicked out, he instantly jumped back and avoided Pan Zi's kick. When Pan Zi saw that the blow missed, he immediately chased after him with a look in his eyes. Taking advantage of the opportunity before the opponent could stand firm, Pan Zi stepped forward and punched out, in the direction of the opponent's face. But what Pan Zi didn't expect was that the other party actually wrapped Pan Zi's fist with one hand before he could stand firm. Then with a pull, Pan Zi staggered directly. Then the opponent's other hand turned into a knife and slashed directly towards Pan Zi's face. Pan Zi was shocked and wanted to avoid the knife, but his other hand was still tightly grasped by the mysterious man's hand. The hand was surprisingly strong, and even Pan Zi couldn't break free. The knife fell immediately. In desperation, Pan Zi leaned back and at an unnatural angle, he jumped up and turned 180 degrees in the air, and kicked the mysterious man directly with both feet on the body. Originally, Pan Zi wanted to break away from the mysterious man's imprisonment in this way. Who knew that the opponent was just like a stone man, as stable as a mountain, but Pan Zi's move put him in a position where he could not advance or retreat. Just when he immediately wanted to remedy the situation in another way, the mysterious man exerted a strong force on Pan Zi's arm and pulled Pan Zi's arm directly. The powerful force directly caused Pan Zi to stumble. Then just when he was caught off guard, the mysterious man grabbed Pan Zi's other hand and directly cut Pan Zi's hands behind his back. Ah, let go, let go. A burst of severe pain came, and Pan Zi quickly begged for mercy. He just wanted to test the opponent's reality and had no intention of causing any substantial harm to the opponent. Now that he was restrained, Pan Zi was afraid that the other party would kill him, so he could only quickly beg for mercy. Stop. We have no ill intentions. When Wu Sanzhong saw Pan Zi being restrained, he immediately stood up and explained. However, Min Yuping on the opposite side had no intention of stopping at all. From Min Yuping's point of view, the group of people in front of him were evil. If there was really no malice, why would they punch and kick themselves as soon as they met? And judging from the fight he had with Pan Zi just now, it seemed that the other party didn't leave any room at all. Such people still tell him that they don't have any ill intentions. This made him really unbelievable. While Wu Sanzhong was speaking, Pan Zi did not stop at all to save himself. Both of his hands were restrained behind him by the oil bottle, unable to break free, so he stood up straight and backed away with all his strength. Trying to catch the person behind him off guard in this way, so that he has the opportunity to directly rely on the control of the person behind him. Min Yuping didn't expect that Pan Zi would suddenly do this. If he didn't check for a moment, he was almost pushed and staggered, but he quickly stabilized his body and retreated directly at Pan Zi's speed. When Wu Sanzhong and others saw the people in the room, They had no intention of letting Pan Zi go, and they didn't intend to waste any more time. He rushed into the house directly and wanted to use force to help Pan Zi out of danger. But before Wu Sanzheng, Fatty Wang, and the others could take action, Su Mu, who came in later, rushed directly in front of Wu Sanzheng and the others and said, "Let me meet him." Underscore, comma. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 125. Let me meet him. With that said, without waiting for Wu Sanzheng and the others to react, Su Mu turned around and faced the man in black clothes with a hood covering his face. Mi Nayuping's skills were very strong, and Su Mu didn't dare to be careless at all. Seeing that Pan Zi had lost the chance to break free, he hurriedly stepped forward to help. Su Mu did not take action directly, but looked intently at the man in front of him with the hood covering his face. Even though he already knew the man's identity, Su Mu did not show that you know him. "Brother, why don't you let my companion go and I'll fight with you?" The face covered by the hood was slightly raised, and the face that had been hidden under the hood was slightly revealed to everyone. It was a very handsome face, with a handsome and upright figure and deep features. Even Su Mu had to say that it was a pity that Mi Nayuping's face had been hidden by him. Mi Nayuping looked into Su Mu's eyes and paused for a few seconds. It seemed that Su Mu was not a treacherous kid. After the other person, he finally released his hands that were holding Pan Zi. Then he lightly pushed on Pan Zi's back, and Pan Zi's body of more than 100 kilograms involuntarily jumped forward several steps. Then, stopping Pan Zi, who was staggering towards him, Su Mu reached out to catch him and stopped Pan Zi's castration. Seeing that Pan Zi still seemed to be dissatisfied after standing firm and wanted to continue fighting, Su Mu quickly grabbed Pan Zi and said, "You are no match for him. Even if you go up now, you can't beat him. You have to fight even if you can't win." "I don't believe it." Pan Zi couldn't help but feel extremely unwilling and resentful that he was defeated at the hands of the other party in just one encounter. As soon as he was released, he wanted to continue the challenge, but Su Mu pulled him back, pushed him gently and asked him to return to Wu Sanzheng. Although Pan Zi was unwilling, he still knew that Su Mu was more skilled than him, so he could only obediently return to Wu Sanzheng and wait. "Although I want to say that we actually don't have any malicious intentions, after all, we were the ones who made the first move, so it's a bit difficult for you to believe, but since we want to fight, let me come and meet you. If I win, I hope you can listen to us." "Explain." The person on the other side still didn't speak, but he already assumed a fighting stance. Su Mu knew that Mi Nayuping didn't like to talk, so he thought he could get an answer from him. Seeing Mi Nayuping's current state, Su Mu just said and rushed directly towards Men Yuping. Su Mu has many abilities. Let's not mention the fact that he has the bloodline of an ancestral dragon. Let's just say that the attributes he has picked up since time travel are already countless. If you use those skills to deal with Menjubo, it will take just a matter of minutes to defeat him. However, Su Mu did not do this. Instead, he chose to use the most basic fist and kick skills to deal with the enemy. This was considered fair by Su Mu. In addition to those incredible skills, Su Mu also knows the skills of Lao Lu. Although Haibei Laoliu's most powerful skill is his sword skills, apart from his sword skills, Haibei Laoliu's boxing and kick skills are not limited. When his and Men Yuping's fists met, Men Yuping's opponent was directly visible. This is a tough one. Men Yuping secretly set a high level for Su Mu, but on the surface he did not dare to relax at all. Seeing Su Mu non-stop and then swinging his fist at him, Mi Nayuping immediately put back all his divergent thoughts and concentrated on dealing with Su Mu. Bang bang bang. Bang bang. There was a dull sound of fists and feet clashing, which made people frown. Wu Sanzheng and others, who had already stood to watch the battle, were also nervously watching the progress of the battle. Sumu missed with one punch and then kicked the Minayu bottle with a flying kick. The opponent obviously didn't expect that Sumu was so fast and had no time to dodge. He could only clasp his fists in front of his chest to bear the kick from Sumu. Bang! With another dull sound, Minayuping was kicked back 2 meters. When he raised his head and looked at Sumu, his eyes were full of shock. This was probably the first time in so many years that he felt that the other party someone who can become his opponent. Thinking this, Minayuping narrowed his eyes and gave up immediately, and started to attack Sumu actively. Sumu's mood did not fluctuate at all. He dodged with ease from Minayuping, Wu Sanzhong, and the others who were watching the battle were all amazed by that relaxed look. The two of them were going back and forth, and to others it seemed that they were equally matched, but only those involved knew the situation between them. Minayuping he could feel that the other party was stronger than him. Moreover, the kung fu used seemed a little familiar. Not only did Minayuping feel familiar, but even Wu Sanzhong beside him felt familiar. When the two faced each other again, Sumu responded with a he easily defeated Minayuping with just one move. Minayuping did not continue to attack, but stopped his movements and pulled down the hood covering himself. Sumu knew that he had decided to cease fighting, so he also stopped. He gained momentum and stood in front of Minayuping, stretched out his hand and said, "We don't know each other without fighting. I am Sumu and they are my companions." After Sumu introduced the people behind him one by one, Minayuping slowly spoke. "I am John Kailing. _, You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 126. I am John Kailing. Minayuping's voice is a little deep but very nice. Although there is no emotion, it does not make people think that the other party is arrogant. John Kailing? Wu Sanzhong exclaimed. He looked at Minayuping with some surprise and said, "John Kailing from the Zhang family of the Nine Gates?" Minayuping didn't expect that he would be recognized, so he looked at Wu Sanzhong and said with a puzzled look on his face, "Who are you?" Wu Sanzhong stood up, introduced himself to Minayuping, and said, "Ping Sanman Wu family, Wu Sanzhong." Wu Sanzhong then introduced himself and several people around him, and then said with some embarrassment, "I originally wanted to test it out, but unexpectedly the flood washed away the Dragon King temple." Panzi also scratched his head, stood up and apologized. "I was offended just now, I hope you won't take it off, Mr. Zhang." Minayuping is not a small-minded person. Since the other party has explained it clearly, he will naturally not take this matter to heart. "I wonder if your appearance here this time is also for the big tomb here?" Seeing that several people had introduced each other and the previous misunderstanding had been resolved, Sumu asked. "Minayu?" Ping didn't hide anything and nodded directly. "Yes, are you the same?" "Yes." Sumu simply admitted, "It seems that our goals are the same, why don't we just go together?" Although Sumu said it in a joking tone, his eyes were sincere, staring straight at Minayuping. Minayuping glanced at Sumu, nodded without hesitation and said, "You are awesome, and it might be easier if I work with you." Wu Sanzhong was a little surprised by Minayuping's frankness. Even Sumu felt that such a straightforward Minayuping could be described as cute. Since they agreed to act together, everyone did not delay. They rested for a while in the guest house. After that, everyone packed up and headed to their destination. The tomb was located on a relatively remote hill in the suburbs, where few people usually walked, so many places were overgrown with weeds and lush trees. Everyone arrived after that. Wu Sanzhong first checked the surrounding environment and earth veins, and then took out something he had prepared for a long time from his backpack. A folding luoyang shovel. Fatty Wang stepped forward to help, installed the Luoyang shovel and took it directly. He immediately inserted the Luoyang shovel into the position designated by Wu Sanzheng. Fatty Wang was very strong, and after a few shovels, Wu Sanzheng stopped. Fatty Wang picked up the Luoyang shovel, and Wu Sanzheng stepped forward to catch him. He put a shovel of wet soil under his nose and smelled it carefully. Sumu watched silently from the side. He knew that Wu Sanzheng was a good hand in fighting, and his ability to smell soil and explore holes was at its peak. At this moment I was still surprised when I saw it with my own eyes. Next, Wu Sanzheng asked Fatty Wang to dig a few more shovels around. After smelling the wet soil he brought up, he finally figured out the general structure of the tomb and determined where they were placed. Several people they worked together to dig out the robbery hole. When they saw the entrance of the hole exposed below, Fatty Wang gave Wu Sanzheng a thumbs up. His ability to find the entrance was really amazing. Everyone descended from the entrance to the tomb in turn. The tomb was dark, with only a little light shining from the outside at the entrance. But that little light seemed to only dare to spread at the entrance of the cave. If there was a ray of light peeking into the tomb, it would seem to be swallowed up by the darkness in the tomb. Generally, Sumu and the others took out the wolf fang flashlights they had prepared. After turning it on, the light in the tomb became brighter. Everyone walked in as they followed the entrance, and a long tomb passage in front of them looked particularly eerie. There are tomb passages piled with bluestones on all sides, just enough for one person to stand up straight. Such a depressing space makes it difficult for people to adapt. The tomb is even colder and damper, as if there is a cold breath surrounding everyone all the time. The air was filled with thick water vapor and tomb aura, and everyone walked quietly. No matter how lightly they stepped, it seemed as if there was a footstep that was following everyone. Tap, tap, tap. Sumu wrinkled, frowning. He didn't like this kind of atmosphere. There was always an inexplicable uneasy feeling lingering in his heart. This tomb is definitely not simple. At this moment, not only Sumu, but also other people also had such thoughts at the same time. Why do I feel like it's getting colder the further inside I go? At this time, Chen Wenjin rubbed his arms and whispered to Wu Sanzheng beside him. But in this claustrophobic and silent space, even small sounds cannot escape everyone's ears. When Chen Wenjin said this, even the taciturn Men Yuping agreed with Chen Wenjin's statement. This tomb is really scary. The light of the flashlight fell in front, illuminating the surrounding stone walls thoroughly. There were only some reliefs on the stone walls, but they had become a bit blurry as time passed. Have you ever felt a little cold all of a sudden? At this time, Fatty Wang, who was walking a little ahead, suddenly said something tremblingly. When he said this, everyone couldn't help but rub their arms and felt that the wind started to blow around them at some unknown time. Something's wrong. Wu Sanzheng suddenly stopped. Judging from his rich experience in reverse fighting, it is obviously abnormal for a dark wind to suddenly blow in such an almost airtight space. Minayuping knows a lot about nature, and for Wu Sanzheng Sumu nodded in agreement with his guess. Sumu frowned, and slightly mobilized his mental power to sense the surrounding environment. Just as his mental power extended forward, he suddenly discovered that an inexplicable fear was attacking them. Come. It was so cold and cold, as if the thing appearing in front was not a living thing at all. Thinking of this, Sumu shuddered, and a thought suddenly came to his mind. No, it's the Yin Soldier's Isle. Sumu exclaimed, and everyone's expressions changed drastically. If a living person collided with the Yin soldiers in the Isle, the soul of the person would be frightened and leave the body, and the soul of the more serious person would be taken away directly by the Yin soldiers. It can be said that it is quite serious. Dangerous. What should we do now? Chen Wenjin looked around in panic, as if to see which side the Yin soldiers would come from. Since the Yin soldiers are crossing the Isle, then as long as we don't collide directly, now we have to find a place to hide immediately, Wu Sanzheng said, but his eyes searched left and right in the tomb passage. Although the tomb passage was a bit short, it was not narrow. Soon Wu Sanzhong saw a stone-carved tomb beast on the side of the tomb passage, so he quickly said, "Come on, let's hide behind that tomb beast." As soon as the words fell, everyone took action. In just a moment, everyone jumped behind the stone tomb beast as quickly as possible and hid. The next second everyone just hid, everyone felt a bone-chilling coldness spreading from one end to the other. Then everyone heard a faint sound of footsteps. Everyone peeked and saw a group of gangsters wearing ancient soldiers' clothes, stepping on them. Uniform steps slowly floated over from the other end of the tomb passage, _ Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 127. A group of gangsters wearing ancient soldiers' clothes slowly floated over from the other end of the tomb passage in uniform steps. The faces of those yin soldiers were pale, and their figures were a little unreal. Their feet seemed to be walking, but in fact they didn't even touch the ground at all. Chen Wenjin took a sneak peek, and was startled by the appearance of those sinister soldiers at just one glance, and almost blurted out an exclamation in his mouth. But in the next second, Wu Sanzhong and Sumu covered their mouths at the same time. "Don't scream." The two of them motioned her to be quiet with their eyes. Chen Wenjin knew that he almost made a big mistake, so he nodded quickly to show that he understood. When the two of them took off their hands, Chen Wenjin immediately covered his mouth, for fear that he would make any noise again. Not only Chen Wenjin, but also the bold Pan Zi, Fatty Wu and others felt their hearts trembling and were a little shocked. Fatty Wang and Pan Zi looked at each other and saw their fear in each other's eyes. Without any time to think, he stretched out his hand and pressed the other person's mouth, fearing that the other party would make a sound and attract the group of yin soldiers in the aisle. In this way, a group of people hid behind the tomb beast in fear, not even daring to take a breath. But okay. The group of yin soldiers passed through the aisle at a relatively fast speed, but within a few breaths, the group of yin soldiers had already passed by in front of everyone. I was afraid that before the group of yin soldiers had gone out of sight, everyone would go to the tomb beast for safety. After squatting behind for a minute, he walked out. The biting chill from before gradually left everyone. Sumu felt that the scene just now was really exciting. After walking out, he took out his hangong from his backpack without saying a word. Sword. With the light sword in hand, Sumu felt that his safety was somewhat guaranteed. As soon as Sumu took out the light sword, Wu Sanzhong and Men Yuping looked over. Wu Sanzhong couldn't help but be surprised when he looked at the sword. With a breath, he directly said the name of Han Guang's sword, and he knew the origin of Han Guang's sword very well. Even Sumu had to admire Wu Sanzheng's knowledge. Men Yuping also looked at Han Guang more. Jian, such a magical weapon, is not far behind his black gold ancient sword. Walk. Wu Sanzhong didn't dare to stop any longer and directly urged everyone to move on. After everyone walked in the tomb passage for a while, they were blocked by a stone wall. The road is blocked, what should we do now? Pan Zi looked at the stone wall with some embarrassment, speechless. Wu Sanzhong stepped forward to check it out, frowned and said, "This is a stone wall." Stone acid wall, everyone is puzzled. The sulfuric acid wall is very troublesome. There is an anti-theft interlayer inside, and the interlayer contains vanadium acid used for alchemy. If it is broken directly, the sulfuric acid inside will definitely splash out directly. If it touches it, it will basically be burned to the skin in a moment. All gone. What to do? Mina Yuping came forward and groped back and forth on the stone wall for a while. Then he inserted his finger hard towards the joint of a brick. However, he only inserted it halfway and couldn't get any further. Mina Yuping retracted his finger. Shaking his head, he said, "The wall is so thick that even I can't get the bricks out." Just when everyone was thinking about how to open the stone wall, they suddenly felt a very familiar cold feeling, coming towards them again. And Fatty Wang, who was watching behind, also looked panicked at this time. Shouted. Not good. The Yin soldiers are coming back. According to the previous speed of the Yin soldiers passing through the aisle, there wasn't much left for them. Seeing that in a few minutes those dark soldiers would come back again, and everyone was still stuck here. Now there are only two options available, either go or leave, which makes everyone feel a little embarrassed and don't know what to choose. Wu Sanzhong glanced at the stone wall that still couldn't find a breach, and felt the cold aura that gradually invaded him. After closing his eyes and thinking for a while, he suddenly opened his eyes. If it doesn't work, let's exit first. It seemed that they had made an extremely difficult decision. Now that they exited, they would have a normal chance of running into the Yin soldiers in the aisle, but they also had a normal chance of being able to exit safely. But if you choose to stay here, you will definitely run into the Yin soldiers directly. For the sake of everyone's safety, Wu Sanzhong had no choice but to make this choice. However, just as he sat down to make his decision, Min Yuping directly took off the long package that had been carried on his back. Unwinding the cloth strips wrapped around the outside, a blade with a simple and elegant shape but exquisite details was revealed. This is Min Yuping's personal weapon, the ancient black gold sword. Taking out the ancient black gold sword, Min Yuping walked directly in front of the stone wall without saying anything. He quickly touched the stone wall with his fingers, and then inserted the blade of the ancient black gold knife directly into the joint between the bricks. Min Yuping frowned and pried the bricks hard, but the thickened stone wall was not easy to pry at all. Even though Min Yuping is extremely talented and powerful, he can only pry the brick a little bit. It is not that easy to take out the brick. When Sumu saw this, he didn't hesitate and stepped forward to help. Sumu has the bonus of the ancestral dragon bloodline. After the strengthening of the bloodline, Sumu's own abilities have made a qualitative leap, and his strength is beyond the reach of ordinary people. Sumu stepped forward and patted Men Yuping, signaling him to let him try. Although Men Yuping didn't understand why Sumu acted like this, he still made room for Sumu. After Sumu got out of the way, Sumu stepped forward and grasped the blade of the ancient black gold sword. Then he took a deep breath, the energy settled in his dantian, and pushed forward hard with his hand. He saw that the black gold ancient knife was like poking into a piece of tofu, and it was inserted into the middle of it easily. Sumu was afraid that he would get stuck into the vanadate layer inside, so he stopped after inserting it for a certain distance. He turned his hand back to the handle of the knife and began to slowly pry the stone bricks. Sumu's move directly attracted everyone's attention. Even Wu Sanzhong, who had just advocated withdrawing, was now full of hope. As long as Sumu is fast enough and breaks through the stone wall before the Yin soldiers return, they will still have a chance. Everyone watched nervously, and everyone waited with bated breath. Under their gaze, the stone brick that Sumu had pried was moving outward at a neither fast nor slow speed. When everyone felt a little unable to hold it in and wanted to take a deep breath, the stone brick was firmly grasped by the oil bottle, and then it was pulled out with force, and the stone brick was pulled out. Out! Everyone exclaimed, with a look of surprise on their faces. Sumu, you are so awesome. This strength is simply amazing. Chen Wenjin gave an exaggerated thumbs up to Sumu, and Pan Zi and Fatty Wang beside him also agreed. Wu Sanzhong also had a look of surprise on his face, as Sumu's ability had reached an unparalleled level. He had always been taciturn. Min Yuping also made an exception this time and praised Sumu. You are amazing. Facing the admiration and praise of everyone, Sumu calmly said, these are all trivial. Sumu looked into the hole exposed after removing the stone bricks, and sure enough he saw that there was an interlayer inside. Sumu didn't know what to do about this, how to deal with it. We can only let the unknown go and let the stuffy oil bottle come up. As soon as the stuffy oil bottle comes up, it is taken out directly from the bag. There are tools and a long transparent pipe as thick as an index finger. Only the stuffy oil bottle can be seen. When the bottle came up, the arrow-like tool was heated red, and then it was plunged into the hole. Then, the transparent pipe that had been placed in the position was quickly inserted into the broken hole. Then everyone saw a lot of brown-red liquid flowing out of the transparent pipe quickly. After the liquid flowed into the corner of the wall along with the pipe, it immediately made a squeaking corrosive sound, and an unbearable sound. The gas that I smelled came out immediately. Hurry up, hurry up. Everyone was waiting anxiously, watching the cold air getting heavier and heavier, and the distance between the Yin soldiers getting closer and closer, which made everyone want to break through the stone wall and get in immediately. Just when everyone thought that a long time had passed, but in fact it was only a few tens of seconds, all the vanadium acid had been discharged through the pipeline. All right, Men Yuping stood up and gestured. 2 words in one sentence were like the sound of nature, making everyone's hearts feel like they were flying to the sky in an instant. Come on, the Yin soldiers are back. Fat Wang, who had been watching the wind, suddenly reminded. Everyone turned around and saw some shadows of Yin soldiers in the distance. Seeing that the Yin soldiers were almost in front of them, everyone couldn't wait to step forward. The combined force broke open the stone wall. Bang! The stone wall collapsed with a loud noise, and everyone walked directly into the collapsed stone wall to avoid the Yin soldiers. However, just when everyone walked in, a hand suddenly stretched out from the side of the wall. _, Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 128. Just when everyone walked in, a palm suddenly stretched out from the side of the wall. Chen Wenjin stood next to the hand and was frightened by this sudden scene and screamed. Pan Zi, who was standing with her, was also frightened and trembled all over, and quickly took out the hand. With the pistol, he turned on the safety and was about to knock off the palm. Just when he was about to press the trigger, he heard a faint cry at the tip of his ear. Who is it? Although the exclamation was weak, it reached everyone's ears accurately. Pan Zi, stop. Wu Sanzheng saw that Pan Zi had taken out his gun and quickly stopped him. At the same time, he also heard Pan Zi calling for help. When Wu Sanzheng called out, he immediately stopped shooting. Who are you? The man looked at Sumu and the others, who suddenly broke in with some fear, and Sumu and the others were also frightened by the hand that suddenly stretched out just now. What else do we want to ask you? And who are you? Pan Zi was so frightened that he almost drew his gun. When he saw that the other party actually asked them who they were, he felt angry for a moment, and his tone naturally had a hint of gunpowder. Just as the man was about to speak, Fatty Wang made a silent movement, and then Sumu and others immediately hid by the wall, not daring to make any sound. At that moment, the Yin soldiers had already reached the stone wall, only one wall away from everyone. While everyone was on tenterhooks, those Yin soldiers circled around in front of the stone wall, seemingly turning a blind eye to the big hole in the stone wall. After circling around, they left at once. Fatty Wang secretly looked out from the edge of the stone wall. After I was sure that the Yin soldiers had turned around and left again, and had walked a long distance away, I breathed a sigh of relief. It can be considered as a escape. Everyone had the same idea. They suddenly escaped a big crisis, and everyone had a comfortable feeling of escaping from death. Just now, every minute and every second, it seemed that their hearts were in their throats. Now, when they come to their senses, only then did I realize that my clothes were soaked with sweat. The stranger seemed to be infected by the tense atmosphere, and did not even dare to speak louder. After the crisis, Wu Sanzheng remembered this strange person, so he stepped forward and asked. Who are you? Everyone's flashlight light fell on the man, so everyone could see the man's appearance very clearly. He was a very haggard and embarrassed man. He must have encountered something in this tomb. Turn into this desperate state. I'm here to rob the tomb. When surrounded by so many people, the man panicked and directly stated his purpose. Wu Sanzhong had already guessed that he was here to rob the tomb, but he didn't know which robber cave this person came down from. Where did you come down from? Just ask if you don't understand. Wu Sanzhong will not let himself be tied up by doubts at all. However, that person is not a province either. When he heard Wu Sanzhong inquired about the robbery cave where he came down, his little eyes turned and he thought of a solution. They were fooled. Wu Sanzhong asked a few more times, but the other party always found a way not to tell the truth. Seeing that nothing could be asked, Wu Sanzhong had no choice but to give up. Just when Wu Sanzhong asked the strange tomb robber when he arrived, Chen Wenjin had already begun to observe everything in this space. Come and see, what is this? Chen Wenjin called out to everyone, and she took the lead in walking towards those strange things. When she walked in, she discovered that the things she was curious about were rows of wooden carvings. The wooden carvings were very strange. Tall, almost 2 people tall, looks very oppressive. What are these carvings? Chen Wenjin shined a flashlight on the wood carvings. After careful observation, he still couldn't tell what these wood carvings were because the shapes were too weird. What's wrong? Sumu walked over first, followed closely by Wu Sanzhong and the others. When they walked in, they also saw those tall wooden sculptures. Look at these wood carvings, do they look strange? Chen Wenjin saw that everyone was following them, so he pointed at the tall wooden carvings and wondered. Generally speaking, the things buried in tombs in the past were mostly bronze or gold and silver vessels, and there were almost no wooden things except coffins. Because it was wooden. Burial objects are easy to decay and will completely rot over time, so there are very few wooden carvings in tombs, so this is why everyone is surprised. Chen Wenjin stepped forward to check it out, and couldn't help but exclaimed. These wooden carvings are actually made of locust trees. Locust tree. As soon as Chen Wenjin's words came out, Wu Sanzhong couldn't help but frown. What does this mean? Fat Wang saw the change in Wu Sanzhen's face, and even Sumu and Mi Yuping looked slightly solemn, and couldn't help but feel doubtful. But Wu Sanzhong hadn't answered yet, and Chen Wenjin had made a new discovery over there. What do you think this is? Chen Wenjin pointed at the wooden carvings. Under the light of the flashlight, some looming reliefs appeared. Everyone stepped forward to take a closer look. Wu Sanzhong, who was well informed, recognized the origin of those reliefs. It turned out to be a heinous picture. A heinous picture? What is that? Not only Fatty Wang is unclear, but even Pan Zi has a question mark over his head with a confused look on his face. Qi Lu says, there are 10 crimes, the first is rebellion, the second is great rebellion, the third is rebellion, the fourth is surrender, the fifth is evil rebellion, the sixth is dishonesty, the seventh is disrespect, the eighth is unfilial, the ninth is unrighteous, and the 10th it is said that in civil strife, those who commit these 10 crimes are not limited to those who are redeemed by the 8 discussions. This means that anyone who commits these 10 sins will be an unpardonable sin even if he encounters a general amnesty. Wu Sanzhong patiently explained the knowledge to everyone, but in his heart he was thinking about who was in the tomb. Why would someone draw a heinous picture here? Could it be that the people in this side of the tomb have committed some serious sin and cannot be redeemed even after death? These wood carvings directly cast a mysterious shadow in everyone's mind, which is really hard to figure out, and there seems to be something even more mysterious. Even the placement of those wood carvings is very weird and evil. It seems that they were specially designed by someone. Place it like that. This. Looking at the scene in front of him, Wu Sanzhong was not only shocked but also shocked. In the side tomb, someone carved something out of a locust tree as a burial object. This kind of wood has actually lasted for thousands of years without any decay. What is even more mysterious is the seemingly haphazard placement. It is weird and evil, and it is really hard to understand. Third Master, do you see any clues? Pan Zi approached Wu Sanzheng and asked. Wu Sanzheng shook his head when he heard the words. He didn't know very well, but he just thought these things were very weird. At this moment, Mi Nayuping beside him spoke. This is Muhui soul locking, a method of suppression. It is obviously used to suppress something in the tomb. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of others also changed. What can this suppress? Could it be 1,000-year-old rice dumpling? Underscore, comma. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 129. This is Muhui soul locking, a method of suppression. It is obviously used to suppress something in the tomb. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of others also changed. What can this suppress? Could it be 1,000-year-old rice dumpling? That's not the case. Sumu shook his head and explained. The Chinese character Sephora japonica is divided into two parts, one half is wood and the other half is ghost, so this kind of tree is also called a ghost tree. There has always been a legend that if a person dies next to a locust tree, that person's soul will die. Locked by the locust tree, unable to be reincarnated. So there are so many locust tree sculptures here, is it possible? There were a lot of speculations in everyone's minds for a moment, and then they heard Sumu tell the real reason. These locust tree sculptures, if I guessed correctly, they should be used to suppress the ghosts of those who died here. Wrong soul, everyone exclaimed. Sumu nodded and said. Yes, they are innocent souls, they are all poor people who died here in vain. Even after death, they are suppressed by these pre-arranged locust wood carvings, and their souls will last for thousands of years, because at the moment of death, there the soul has been locked by those locust trees, and it has been forced to reincarnate after thousands of years. Sumu, how do you know so many things? So amazing. Chen Wenjin was extremely impressed by what Sumu knew. Even Wu Sanzheng was a little bit behind Sumu's knowledge. Although Mi Nayuping didn't say anything, he looked at Sumu with a little more knowledge. What? Like looking at a respectable opponent, but also looking at a reliable teammate, in short, very much appreciated. It would be too pitiful to have to be reincarnated for thousands of years, right? After all, Chen Wenjin is a girl, and she always has more sympathy. But at this time, she can only talk, but the tomb robber who followed them answered. Yes, it's so pitiful. Being trapped in this small and dark tomb for thousands of years, without being allowed to reincarnate, it's so pitiful. The tomb robber looked at the locust wood carvings with sympathy, his eyes scanned the tomb chamber, and then fell on the locust wood coffin placed in the middle. No, I have to release them all. Those ghosts who have been imprisoned here all this time are too pitiful, that coffin must be where they are imprisoned. As long as we open the coffin, all of those ghosts may be gone. Freed. As he said that, the tomb robber walked straight towards the locust wood coffin. There was no mercy in his eyes, but an indescribable look of greed. Stop. Before the tomb robber reached the coffin, Mu directly stopped the tomb robber. Everyone looked at Sumu and heard Sumu say in a low voice. The current environment is not suitable for now. If the coffin is opened in such a harsh environment, the corpse inside may be a fake corpse after being released. Fake corpse. These two simple words immediately stunned everyone. What did they fear most in a fight? Apart from the dangerous hidden weapons, it was the rice dumplings used to deceive corpses. At this moment, Sumu said that it was possible to deceive corpses. The fat man, King Chen Wenjin, who was originally in favor of opening the coffin, suddenly stopped thinking about opening the coffin. Wu Sanzheng has been observing this tomb robber of unknown origin. From the beginning, he felt that this person was a bit weird, and his words were full of connotations. He was vague and didn't feel like he was telling the truth. In addition, he had always behaved in front of them in a submissive and timid manner. But now he seemed to be a different person, regarding the matter of opening the coffin. Extremely positive, as if with some purpose. Don't you know that opening a coffin may cause the corpse inside to appear dead? Wu Sanzheng looked at the tomb robber suspiciously, shining the flashlight directly on the other person's face and carefully observing his expression. Or do you have some ulterior motive in wanting to open the coffin so actively? Wu Sanzheng said this, and Chen Wenjin reacted. If the coffin is opened in such a vulgar environment, it is really difficult to predict the consequences. When he looks at the tomb robber, his eyes become evil. Say, did you do it on purpose? Remembering that he was almost instigated by this tomb robber just now, Chen Wenjin became very angry. If there really was something in the coffin to fake the corpse, then it would be really troublesome. The tomb robber was questioned by Wu Sanzheng and Chen Wenjin. The expression on his face changed slightly, but in an instant he returned to his previous timid and fearful look, and said in a trembling voice. I don't have any ulterior motives, I just heard you say that those ghosts have been trapped for thousands of years and cannot be reincarnated, and I sympathize with those who died innocently and in vain. Since you can't say it, then don't say it. All right. The tomb robber was stared at so closely by everyone, and his eyes couldn't help but start to dodge. Seeing him speaking so inconsistently, everyone began to doubt his identity. Just when Wu Sanzheng was about to continue questioning the tomb robbers, the shouts of Fatty Wang and Pan Zi came from the side. Third Master, Su Mu, come here quickly. Opened. The tomb door here is open. Everyone turned around and saw that Fatty Wang and Pan Zi had touched the exit of the tomb door at some point. The two of them had been tinkering with the tomb door for a long time, and they actually opened the tomb door. Okay. Fatty really has you. Su Mu walked up to Fatty Wang, patted Fatty Wang on the back and praised him. Fatty Wang laughed immodestly and said proudly. Of course. Pan Zi on the side gave Fatty Wang a blank look. Is this guy probably forgetting that he was there to help him and he was able to open the tomb door smoothly? Wu Sanzheng and Mi Yuping also came to the side tomb chamber. At the exit, even the tomb robber followed everyone obediently. Su Mu took a flashlight and shined it towards the exit of the side tomb chamber, and found that there was a slightly wider tomb passage outside the exit. Not far away, there is also a corner, so no one can see where the end of this tomb passage leads to. Let's go and have a look. Underscore, comma. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 130. Let's go and have a look. Wu Sanzheng took the lead to step out of the tomb chamber and into the tomb passage with a flashlight. Pan Zi and Chen Wenjin followed closely behind him. Su Mu and Fatty Wang also walked out, and Mi Yuping followed the tomb robber one after another. Come up. The tomb passages are paved with bluestone slabs, and there are some reliefs on them. Everyone looked carefully, but they were just meaningless carvings. Everyone walked carefully, paying attention to whether there were any hidden weapons around them. Something like that. I was very careful with my steps, for fear of stepping into some trap. Fortunately, this section of the tomb passage was very safe, and the group of people walked to the innermost part without any danger. At the end of the tomb passage was a tall tomb door. There were many cloud patterns carved on the door. Su Mu stepped forward and pushed it, and found that the two tomb doors were tightly closed together and could not be pushed open at all with human power. This should be the main tomb chamber. Chen Wenjin looked at the huge stone tomb door in front of him and exclaimed, then looked at Wu Sanzheng and said, Third brother, Don't you usually boast that you are very good at arithmetic? It's up to you now. Wu Sanzheng has always been in love with Chen Wenjin. Now seeing the girl he likes thinking so highly of him, of course he can't let go of his timidity. So he stood up directly, patted Chen Wenjin's chest and promised. Don't worry, Miss Wenjin, just watch me next. Fatty Sumu and Wang Wang who were watching the show couldn't help but laugh when they saw this scene. Fatty Wang thought that Wu Sanzheng was usually a serious person, but he didn't expect that he was also a man who showed off in front of women. Sumu felt that the current Wu Sanzheng is the real him. It is hard to imagine what Wu Sanzheng will look like after losing Chen Wenjin in the future. Since he has given a guarantee to Chen Wenjin, Wu Sanzheng is naturally extremely dedicated to cracking the tomb door mechanism. It has to be said that Wu Sanzheng is indeed outstanding in tomb chamber mechanics. As soon as he stepped forward, he began to carefully examine the carved cloud patterns on the tomb door, and then checked around the stone door. It can be said that he carefully examined every inch. Checked it again. He was carefully looking for the mechanism to open the tomb door, while the others could only stay aside and wait. Sumu also waited quietly, because he had no knowledge of this type of tomb door mechanism. I don't understand, so of course I can't help. Ding. It is detected that there are dropped attributes nearby. Please ask the host whether to pick it up. Suddenly, a systematic mechanical inquiry sounded in Sumu's mind. He looked around for a moment, and then he saw a white light group falling on the ground not far from Wusan province. Sumu was overjoyed, and quickly clicked on the attributes to check, and it turned out to be about the attributes of the mechanism number technique. So without even thinking about it, Sumu directly chose to agree in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1000 doors machine technique, the initial level is level 1. Listening to the system prompts, Suji was about to burst into happiness. He did not expect that this attribute would be the tomb robbing mechanism technique. The so-called tomb robbing mechanism technique can be said to include many types. It was first created by the ancients based on the production level and material conditions at that time. Some mechanical items came out that could be used in all aspects of life. Later, some people slowly began to talk about the application of mechanism technology in warfare. Later, when the nobles in the ancient palace built mausoleums for themselves, they were afraid of what would happen to them after they died. Others dug tombs and stole them, so they began to apply some mechanism skills to the tombs. Similar to setting fire in ancient tombs, using crossbows in ancient tombs, or storing water in ancient tombs. Place huge rocks that are easy to collapse on the top of the tomb. Quicksand to prevent theft, or filling a mercury pool in the tomb, placing a series of flaps, installing a door-blocking knife cart, hanging huge stones in the tomb passage, placing corpse poison in the coffin. All of these are the most basic tricks of the tomb. Those who are more powerful will also assist with curses, making those who dare to break into the tomb suffer from the curse. After Sumu obtained the attributes of Kinman Jishu, he also understood a lot about these. And looking for Sumu naturally knew the simplest mechanism, the tomb door mechanism. Wu Sanzheng, who knew the mechanism better, was naturally more proficient in this aspect. In just a moment, he found the mechanism to open the tomb door. Ka-ka-ka, ka-ka. When Wu Sanzheng twisted a mechanism hidden on the carving of the tomb door, a dull sound of chain rotation came from the stone wall. Everyone's eyes focused on the stone doors, and then everyone was delighted to find that the two stone doors slowly opened. Awesome, Mr. Wu. Fat Wang likes to flatter others. Now seeing Wu Sanzheng opening the tomb door easily, he couldn't help but praise. Pan Zi also said with a proud face, that's not it, don't look at who it is, then but third master, with that proud look, those who didn't know it thought it was Pan Zi who opened the tomb door. Look, you were the one who opened it. Fat Wang saw Pan Zi's proud face and couldn't help but snarled. Pan Zi didn't take it seriously at all and said, it wasn't me, but it was the third master who drove it. Fat Wang was speechless, and decided not to be like Pan Zi, a fan of Wusan province. Everyone carefully entered the main tomb together, shining their flashlights inside, and what they saw was a bronze cauldron that was nearly a person tall. The surface of the cauldron, there were some incomprehensible rune carvings on it, which looked simple and grand. A few meters directly behind the cauldron, there was a huge coffin. Sumu also saw the bronze cauldron, and his eyes going back and forth between the bronze cauldron and the coffin behind it, my thoughts began to recall the original this plot in. That was when Wu Tianzhen, Mi Nayuping, and the others came in together and saw the coffin and the bronze tripod. He knew that the bronze cauldron was used for sacrifice, and there was a very terrifying existence in the coffin. That was King Lu Shang, the owner of this tomb, who had turned into a bloody corpse. Sumu focused his attention on the coffin, mainly on the bloody corpse in the coffin. He knew that their appearance had alarmed the bloody corpse, but Sumu did not have any fear, nor was he worried about the outbreak of the bloody corpse. Because he knew that Mi Nayuping had a secret skill that could communicate with Zhongzi, Sumu even had some vague expectations for the outbreak of blood corpses later. Maybe when the blood zombies break out later, when Menju Bottle communicates with the blood zombies, what other incredible attributes will he drop? Thinking of this, Sumu secretly glanced at the taciturn Mi Nayuping, with a hint of fire in his eyes. At this time, Mi Nayuping, who had no idea, just felt something was different, but after looking around, he still found nothing. Fatty Wang and Pan Zi kept their eyes fixed on the tall bronze tripod. Fatty Wang said with bright eyes, "Such a big cauldron looks like a very good weapon, let's go over and take a look, maybe there will be something good inside." Fatty Wang called Pan Zi over, and Pan Zi followed Fatty Wang directly towards the bronze tripod without delay.